Thank you very much for starting this interview. I'm interviewing James Turner, who worked at Rocky Flats for many years, and he will talk about his work at Rocky Flats. And this is an oral history for the Maria Rogers project of the Carnegie Library. And the interviewer is Dorothy Charlo. And today's date is May 16th, 2003. That's right. Okay, the first question, as I promised, is when and where were you born?
I was born in Haynesville, Louisiana, November 22nd, 1943.
And did you grow up in Louisiana?
Yes, I did. I grew up in Louisiana. After I finished high school, I went to Houston, Texas. Right, I lived there for a couple of years or so.
And in Louisiana, did you come from a big family or a small family?
I came from a family of 6. I'm the oldest one of 6 children.
And then when you went to school in Louisiana? Then?
Yes, I did.
And then did you move to Texas?
Yes, I moved to Houston, Texas after high school. And after that, I got drafted into the military in 1965. I spent a couple of years in the military. I spent my time up in Alaska, Fort Wainwright, Alaska. Right. And upon completion of my military duty, I was going back. I drove from Alaska. I was on my way back to Louisiana, and I stopped in Colorado. So I liked it here. I ended up here in Colorado.
That's very interesting. So you were just getting out of the military and looking for a job then?
Yes, I was.
What did you do? What branch of the military were you in?
I was in the U.S. Army.
And what did you do in the Army?
In the Army, I was in communication.
And so when you were getting out of the Army, you stopped here?
Yes, I had relatives here.
Oh.
So I was visiting my relatives. Stopped here for a little while. Then I went back to Louisiana for a while, and then I came back to Colorado.
I see. And when did you first start thinking about working at Rocky Flats?
Well, I was looking for work in 1967. It's like about the fall of 1967. I went several places looking for work, to include Western Electric, IBM up in Boulder, and a telephone company, and also a biochemical company at the time. It was at Rocky Flats. So I found a job working part-time at Stapleton Airport. I worked there until I got called to Dow Chemical Company, Rocky Flats.
So that was when Dow was running?
Yes, exactly.
Do you remember what your first interview at Rocky Flats was like? Did they tell you what you would be doing or anything like that?
No, I don't exactly remember. It's been so many years ago. I don't remember.
What was your first job? I mean, what were you hired into?
The first job I had when I worked at Rocky Flats, I started off working in trucking and delivery, moving drums, like the contaminated drums and stuff like that, from one building to the other building. Matter of fact, I worked at the 903 pad, I think it was, where they had these drums stored for quite a few years, and they had started to rust, deteriorate. So I worked in that area for a while. Then after that, there was a fire. I think it's Mother's Day, 1969.
Yes.
A major fire at Rocky Flats. So I started in on that job decontamination. So I did that for a year or so.
But now you had been working there already before the fire.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, moving the drums in the
right. Right.
What are your recollections about the fire? Did you, because you were already working there, do you remember being called in, or?
No, I wasn't called in. I just, found out when we came back to work like that Monday morning, that they had the area like pretty much barricaded off. So we just, stayed out of the area.
Yeah.
And not too long afterward, they needed workers out in the area, so I volunteered to go into decontamination work.
So then you went into the building, would it have been did you go into 776? Wasn't that?
Yes, that's right,
Yeah.
that area.
Yeah. What was that work like?
We had worked in full face mask, supplied air. We had started off in supplied air suits. And then as we got it decontaminated, it was less hot than it was before. Then they start using full face masks.
That's hard to work in, isn't it?
It's pretty hard, the breathing and everything, but it's supposedly it was safe, more safe.
Yeah. And then after you worked cleaning up the fire, did you go back to the transportation work, or?
No, there was a new job classification called air filter technician. I started that in 1970. I think about the spring of 1970 as an air filter technician. Went into filter plant, I'm changing out filters.
Yeah.
And this job was all throughout the whole plant site, in all the buildings, every building, where there was filters. That was my job.
Oh, so you went in most of the buildings then?
Right, most of the building, filter plantums, right.
Can you explain a little bit what that's about for people who wouldn't know anything about it? What was the function of the filters?
The filters were to like air, like when hot air come from like different glove boxes and air through the ducts, it went into the filter plantums, and from the plantums it went through different stages of filters before it went, up to stack, went into the atmosphere. So we had to, change those filters, and from time to time.
Yeah, the filters were to keep stuff from getting out in the air.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
Right.
They weren't to keep the air. Usually we think of filters cleaning up outside air, but this is just
to clean the air from the inside the building that exhaust to the outside.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And did you, what was it like? Did you have to climb up on things, or?
In some of the plantums, the larger plantums, we had scaffolders that we had to climb up on, to change out the filters.
Did you consider that? Did it feel like hard work or dangerous work to you?
Well, not really. I felt safe. We always had safety meetings and safety precautions and stuff like that. So I felt safe doing it.
Were you a member of the union?
Yes, I was. All the while I was at Rocky Flats, all the years I was there, I was a member for approximately 26 years. Right.
Let's see, when you first came on, was it a union shop at that time, or?
Yes, it was. It was a union shop. It was I remember the name of the union at that time, but later years it changed to the steel workers. Right. I think it was AFL-CIO, right? Or Teamsters or something, I'm not sure.
Yeah, but it became the steel workers.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that when I interviewed Jim Kelly, he talked about some election, a big election when it was, I can't remember, I think it was maybe changing over to becoming the steel workers.
Just recently?
No, this was back a long time ago.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't.
Years ago,
Yeah.
right. Oh, yes, okay. Yeah, because it's been steel workers for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Right, many years.
Now, I believe that after the fire, several years after the fire, Dow Chemical left and another contractor came in.
Rockwell International.
Yeah.
And I think Dow Chemical left about 1975, I think it was.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that vicinity. And Rockwell International took over. They ran the plant up until, I think, EG&G took over, and I think it was 1970. No, I'm sorry, 1990. I'm sorry, I'm going back too far. Right. I think it was about that time that they took over. now I think another company has taken over since then. It's Hill.
Yes.
Right.
Was that shift from Dow to Rockwell
Right.
a difficult one for you?
Well, no, not really. No, it seemed to be, pretty much the same. Wasn't no big changes, I don't think. The thing is that Dow was when Dow Chemical ran the plant. It was like more secret,
Oh.
than it was when Rockwell took over. They were kind of like they want to, kind of like communicate with the public, let them know what was going on at the plant.
So that was a change.
Right, that was a change. Right.
Now, I think the protesters started coming in about 1978 or so. I think one of the big protests was in 1978.
Well, they had several protesters out there, quite a few. Even times when protesters used to chain themselves to the railroad tracks.
Yes.
Yeah. And they even had, I think, a teepee or something like that built on the track, to keep the train from coming in. They stayed there for quite a while. And
the teepee was on the track?
I think it was, right.
Oh.
Yeah. Because the train used to, would come into the plant, so they were trying to, protest to keep the train from coming into the plant.
Yeah.
And they used to congregate at, like, the east and the west gates, protesting. But I think they moved it from the east to the west side because they put a lot of signs out there on the east side saying no parking all along the Indiana Avenue. So the protest went to the west side. Right. That made it harder for them. So they went like the west side of the plant, the west entrance. Now one year they had a big, huge protest up on the hill up the be north of the plant. Way up there, they had it up there once or twice.
Oh. Did that have much impact on people working there, or how did you feel about that in particular?
Well, I was like wondering what they protesting for. We kind of like doing our patriotic job, trying to defend our country. And I was wondering what's all the fuss about. I didn't really know what was going on.
So it didn't make a lot of sense to you?
Not really.
Did you get mad at the protesters?
Well, I didn't really get mad at them. I kind of like, don't they have anything to do? Don't they have a job? Like, why are they here trying to, stop the work here? Because Rocky Flats employed quite a few people there. And the benefits were, good. They had good benefits and stuff like that. And I thought that they, seemed to have a pretty good, safety program. So I was wondering, like I said, what all the fuss was about.
When you first started working at Rocky Flats, what made you select that job over others?
Well, like I said, it was the first one that really decent job that I got called to, because I like working part-time, like I mentioned earlier, at Stapleton Airport, and this was a better job. As a matter of fact, I worked nights at Stapleton, so I could look for a better job during the daytime, because I'm going to be taking off from my part-time night job.
Mm-hmm. And so when you got the job at Rocky Flats, you felt pretty pleased?
Yes, I did.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, when you first, you had to get security clearance, is that right?
Exactly, right.
What was that like? For you, did they ask you a bunch of questions, or how did that?
Yes, they asked me some questions. Matter of fact, I had a security clearance when I was in the military. I was in like crypto, like as a communication and stuff like that. So I hadn't, gone a whole bunch of other places, after I in the military, and it was pretty easy for me to get a clearance. It wasn't as hard as probably for some people that had traveled all over the country and everything, gone all these other different places.
Since you were just coming from the military.
Right.
They ask questions of one's family and that sort of thing, don't they?
Right, but they did an investigation. They go check. You maybe I went to school back in my hometown and everything.
Oh.
Yes, they checking everything out. Yeah. Right.
Well, getting back to how things were for you, did you stay in the air filter? Now you were called an air filter
Technician. Right.
And that had particular qualifications, or they trained you to do it?
Right, exactly. We had training.
Did you stay with that position throughout your time?
No, I left that job in I think the summer of 1977. I went into an electrician apprenticeship program. So I went through that for about 3 years. And I think about 1980, I turned out to be a journeyman electrician. So that's what I did.
A journeyman electrician.
Right.
Okay,
right.
so that's a full-fledged
Electrician,
yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I did that for a little while. Then after that, I got out of the buildings. I didn't want to work in the buildings anymore. So I went to work as a lineman electrician, which is like working on high voltage lines.
Outside?
Right, exactly, outside. Because I didn't want to, I had a feeling, I had a cough, but then I had developed a chronic cough. And I kind of had a gut feeling, I said, gee, something could be wrong with me, because I had worked in those buildings for a lot of years. And I started coughing, so I said, well, if I work this plant power building, I'd be like working outside. I want to be really going into the buildings. So that's what I did from about 1980 until 1994, until I left the plant.
And so even before around 1980, then you were beginning to notice a cough?
Yes, I was,
yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm. And was it better outside?
Well, not really at the time, because I was around people who smoked all the time, and I complained about the smoke, and smoking would make me, aggravate my cough, make me cough more, and sneezing, so I kind of complained about it, but
had you been a smoker yourself?
I never smoked
You never
before,
smoked.
no.
So when you started coughing, you knew it wasn't just a smoker's cough.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I just wondered what it was, Started getting shortness of breath and everything, and I kind of said, well, maybe I could have been exposed to something I didn't really know at the time.
When did you begin to suspect that, do you remember when you began to suspect that it was, might be Berylliosis? Did you know anything about Berylliosis then?
No, I didn't.
Is that
Well,
the information didn't come out until later, did it?
Right, not until later. I think in about 1988 or 89, there was a survey that was, that they had sent to the employees around the plant site, and, as to some of the areas that you had worked, and if you had worked around beryllium. And so I filled the survey out. And then they had a nurse that had come to Rocky Flats from National Jewish, and the nurse drew blood, that's blood samples, and took back to National Jewish, and I guess they were doing a study on the workers from Rocky Flats. So what I understood was that the National Jewish had got a grant, I think it was $2.5 million grant to do a study on the workers from Rocky Flats to find out if they had been exposed to beryllium. And so I was in that study. So they found out that, I was positive, to beryllium. So then I went into National Jewish, and then I got more tests, and they proved that, that I did have a CBD, Chronic Beryllium Disease, or Berylliosis. This was in 1990 when I was diagnosed with it.
I see.
Right.
And at that time, you were still able to work?
Yes, I was still working. I was able to work, but I was working shift work at the time too. I wasn't out there doing, like I previously done, like heavy duty work.
Yeah.
I was doing working shift work. It's like pretty much mostly I'm monitoring the, electrical power at the plant.
Yeah. And meaning that you you'd go around and check to see
Right.
if things were
Right.
working properly.
Right. Exactly.
And what, after you got diagnosed, you still worked for a number of years then?
Yes, I did. It was kind of strange when I first was diagnosed with Chronic Beryllium Disease. My managers and supervisors kind of like, well, yeah, they tried to send me to building 771 where they had a plutonium at. And that's when I said, and I had to kind of speak up then. I said, like, no, I said, gee, I don't think that'll be a good building for me. So I was told that, it was probably the best building that, that I could go to that didn't have beryllium, because they didn't want me to get more exposure from beryllium. So they said, well, we don't have beryllium in 771. I said, well, what else do you have? You have plutonium down there. And I said, just as bad or worse. So I said, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
So at that time, I guess they marked me as a troublemaker, because I started speaking up, And I remember that we finally had a meeting. They had been having meetings, not including myself, what they were going to do with me and where they were going to relocate me and all this, yada, yada, yada. So finally, I wanted to have a meeting. I said, I wanted to see what's going on. I said, let me in the meeting. I said, it concerns me. Why can't I be in the meetings? So I went and talked to the union, and I told them, I said, they're just trying to kick me out of this department because of a personality problem or something like that, because I complained about, the smoking and stuff, and then, things like that, because it was bothering me. But
It's
that
not
was
exactly a personality.
well, that's what they thought, But my manager and my supervisor. But anyway, after that, but I was sent to 771 building for like 2 or 3 days, something like that. And then they finally had a meeting, and I was included in this meeting. And they decided that they would keep me in the plant power department, and that I would, if I had to go in into these buildings where they had beryllium, that I would have to put on a respirator.
So that's what you did for the rest of
Right.
the time. Did the union help you out with that?
Well, the union was kind of like yes and no, because they told me that they had done all they could do, to try to find me, in another area, to work or try to keep me on my job. But they said I had to go to 771 building because that was the only building that that I could work in. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a job. That's when I finally told myself, gee, I said, you guys, if you don't do anything, the local, I said, I go to the international. I talk with those people up there. And I said, if they don't do anything, I said, I go to Washington. I told myself, I sit on the steps, I says, and somebody be wondering, why are you here? And I tell them, why I was here. So finally, they had this meeting, and they decided to give me the plant power. But I got harassed over that quite a bit afterward. And I was told that I would have been sorry that I didn't go to 771 building to work. But,
Who did you get harassed by?
My manager, my supervisor, yes, kind of like, yeah. They took me off the shift that I was working and put me on the day shift. And they alleged that they brought me on for training, okay? So they kept me on there from October of 1992 until January 1993, I think it was. And they said, well, they first said that they wanted, my medical restriction, and to see that I adhere to my medical restriction, and all that kind of stuff. They use all kinds of tactics to try to, harass me But I kept hanging in there.
When they put you on the day shift, was that something that wasn't as good for you?
Right, exactly. They also gave me a walkie-talkie and had me walking all around the plant site, wherever I had to go. They wanted me to call every half hour and let them know my status, let them know, well, what I'm doing, who I am, and everything like that. Like when I was on shift, I had a pickup. I could, ride, around the plant site.
Which was better for you with the breathing
Exactly.
problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And the walkie-talkie then was just harassment?
It was a little radio. They wanted, it was all harassment. Right.
Yeah. Did you feel as though they were harassing you, trying to get you to quit?
I do believe that that's what they were trying to do. Right. especially after this. It was an article that came out in the Sunday Denver Post in 1992. The headlines: U.S. stalls workers' compensation claims at Rocky Flats, and I was interviewed. I just told him, I said, well, if Rocky Flats made the workers sick, they should take care of them, and that was about it. I was kind of like, speaking up, that the workers should be, compensated, should be taken care of.
Yes.
We were like, patriotic. We were Cold War veterans, and hey, we did our job, and we did it, well.
Yeah. And you had no idea that there was something like beryllium that would make you sick.
Right, I had no idea. The thing that we used to really worry about, was especially when we were working as air filter technicians, was like criticalities, like in glove boxes, things going critical. Beryllium, the beryllium shops, the machinists would work there at the machine beryllium, and they took their breaks there and everything. It's like, it's like, it's no problem. So hey, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know it was harmful, either. I really didn't know,
So you'd been working there for years before it came out, really.
Exactly, right.
Yeah. Do you have any idea where, you probably, since you were going into many buildings, it could have been many places that you were exposed to the beryllium, is that right?
Yes, well, it was, all the buildings throughout the plant site when they had. Matter of fact, I demanded a list of those buildings when they were trying to, when I was relocate me and everything. And it was like, I think about 30-some buildings where they either housed beryllium or once used it, or they had some type of lab or something in the building in some corner or something like that where they had beryllium. So the thing was that they didn't want me to get more exposure. So. And I found later, I think they had it in 771 building where they tried to send me. At first when I was diagnosed with CBD.
That is ironic, because of course 771 has more plutonium exposure than any other building, doesn't it?
Right.
And more potential.
Right. It was like rumored to be the most dangerous building in the country for a while. Yeah.
Did you ever go into it when you were changing the air filters?
Oh yes, we worked in there quite a bit of time. Matter of fact, we worked out of that building. That's why our office was down there, our main, shop. And we worked out of that building throughout the plant site, doing other jobs, changing filters. But that was our main headquarters. Right.
How was it for you before you started getting harassed with beryllium issues? Did you find that people were congenial to work with, or was it always kind of difficult?
Well, it seemed, that everybody, worked together pretty much. Until afterward, I guess when I started complaining about the smoking and stuff, it's like, I think the supervisor smoked. He was like a chain smoker. And 3 or 4 of the workers smoked. And the building that we was in, it was like inadequate for a smoke area because there was no ventilation in that building. And matter of fact, they did a survey of that building. I think the industrial safety, I think it was. And they smoke tested and everything and said that the smoke was laying in the building instead of Xing out, that it didn't have any ventilation system. So they use a standalone fan, to try to blow the smoke around in the building and try to move it.
Just a regular fan? What
Right,
type
a
of fan?
standalone fan, a fan that, you stand up with the big fan.
Standalone.
Yes, right. Right, so.
And that just blows it around.
Right, exactly.
And of course, is it not true that you don't have filters to the outside? I mean, you have filters, but you don't want things to easily go to the outside, right?
Well, this little building I'm talking about, this is like a little, kind of like a Quonset hut building or some kind of, just a little tin building. That's where we had our trucks and our material for the overhead electrical power, the plant power. Matter of fact, I told him I thought that building was a sick building because I remember when I first started working at the plant, we had drums stored in that building, and I don't know what, type of, what was in the drums. I know it was like a drum storage building, and later they converted to, like a building for plant power, for electrical. Right. Because I know.
But do you think some of the drums that were moved to the 903 pad came from?
I don't know, but I know there was a lot of drums in that building. I don't know what was in them.
Now, were you there when it kind of hit the papers about the 903 pad and the storage of that? Was there quite a fuss made about that?
You mean when they raided Rocky Flats?
Well, yeah, maybe they didn't discover about the 903 pad until they raided. Is that right?
Yes, I was there when they raided the plant.
I didn't realize that.
You didn't realize that they raided the plant?
Yes, I knew
that. About that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
What was that like for you?
Well, I was working shift work, and I just like away from most of the other workers, and it was kind of like really didn't have anything to do with me. But I did get a letter, I think from a union, saying something about that if somewhere down the line I had filed a safety concern, and if I was called, that they would like to go with me to be, to represent me. But I never got called anything like that by the FBI.
Yeah. So you never actually talked with the FBI?
No.
What was your impression when when the raid first started? Did you know what was going on, or?
No, I didn't. So you come home, you see it on TV, something like that. That's
when you
where
were
you
at work,
find something.
did you know something was happening or not?
No, I didn't.
Must have been a shock to come home and see it on the news.
Right. Yes, really. Yes. A lot of that stuff, like for instance, they have like a little problem out there, a little fire or something like that. Just a little fire, glove box or something, anything. You come home, it's on the news, something that you didn't even know about. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I didn't realize that it took the FBI raid to bring out this issue with the 903 pad. Is that right?
Well, I think probably so, because I think Jim Stone, you heard of Jim Stone, you know who he is,
I interviewed him.
Oh, you did?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he was a whistleblower?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what all got it started. Right.
Did you know anything about some of those trench burials that were done? As I gathered, they were done at night, or when people didn't know about it.
Yeah, I heard about it, but I didn't
You didn't
have no first-hand information. I just heard about it and everything. But
Now, after you were diagnosed with chronic beryllium disease, were there a group of you that were diagnosed at the same time, since they were just learning about it, or?
yes, there was. There were quite a few people that were diagnosed at the same time. Pretty much,
That was part of the research study, right?
Right, exactly.
And what did they, did you went to National Jewish and started getting your health care there?
Yeah, exactly, right. Yes, they were doing the biopsy and the bronchoscopy and the lavage, the pulmonary function test, and the gas exchange, I think they call it, when they had you, exercising on the back and had the needle in your artery, checking to see how much oxygen was getting into your blood. They did all of that. I went through that for several times.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't go through it anymore. Because, like I told them, as far as I'm concerned, they found out the problem, with me and everything. I didn't want to just be a guinea pig.
Yeah.
But I donate blood and stuff for the, for the studies, and You know, anything that that they want me to do, I try to help.
Yeah.
So that they can maybe have some type of medical breakthrough that can help other people.
Yeah.
Right.
Is there what kind of treatment do you get now? Has it changed since you were first diagnosed?
Well, not really. I still, except for, like I said, I don't go through the biopsy. I don't get that anymore, and the lavage and the bronchoscopy. I don't. Lavage.
Can you describe that?
That's a washing of the lungs.
I see.
They wash and then they recover, like what they can, from it. And I guess they studied. It's a study too. In other words, I'm a consent subject. Right.
So you gave your consent to
Right.
do that.
Right.
It was more to study what was going on in the lungs than to help you, is that right?
Well, it's like, it's helped you, to help to and to help others, and to find ways that they could probably, like, like a lot of people hear about, bronchoscopy, a lavage, a biopsy, doing all that. They say, well, I don't want them poking around them. I don't want this, I don't want that, They're trying to find ways that they could kind of like maybe get around that and make it easier, more comfortable, for people.
Was it
so
pretty
that to come.
uncomfortable?
Well, yes, 2 or 3 days, you like cough up blood, from the biopsy,
Mm-hmm.
the bronchoscopy, whatever I think it was.
Now the biopsy, how did they do that?
Right, they go down and get little samples of your lung tissue.
Yeah, through
Right.
with a needle or?
I don't know. They put you out.
Okay.
Some people, they went through the side. I know. They went like cut in, went through the back side. Like mine, I think they went up my nose. I think it was.
Oh.
Right. And they would get little samples.
Yeah. And you mentioned another procedure, what was that? other one?
Bronchoscopy.
Yes.
Right.
Bronchoscopy?
Right.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Is that going down into the
Right. I think so. Right. I think it is. Right.
So you had to go through all of that.
Yes, I
But there
did.
were other workers that were going through the same thing.
Exactly. Right.
Mhm. Did you know any of them? Did you kind of...
Yes, I pretty much know most all of them.
Yeah, you
Right.
probably got acquainted.
Yes. Well, I know them from the plant too. From years of working out there at the plant. Kind of like a big family.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Uh-huh. When you retired, I gather that you began to feel that you couldn't do the work.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I couldn't, do the work, and then, like I said, the houses and stuff like that. I just, I was sick and tired of coming to work, sick and tired all the time. Yeah, so matter of fact, a few times I was out there, I was trying to work, and I was coughing and stuff, just coughing, and literally I cried, a few times, especially when they had taken me off my shift and they was harassing me. It's kind of like, what I do to deserve this? I didn't really do anything, It's kind of like retaliation or something like that.
Yeah. So was it your idea I mean, what was the process by which you went on disability?
Well, as I left the plant, what happened was I was feeling so bad, I told myself, I was kind of like, I said, gee, if something happened to me, I said, I don't want it to happen to me at this plant site. I'd rather be at home. That's what I felt at the time. I felt, sick. I was hurting.
Yeah.
And after I left the plant, like I said, I started feeling, a little better. I don't been coughing much, through the years, I got so that my cough, like we're talking now, I used to, every breath I would take, I was coughing. I would cough so much that, I would be embarrassed to go out in public, because people like looking at me like, what's his problem, like, what's wrong with that fella? Is he gonna make it or what, And because I was coughing, I was, having headaches from coughing and stuff, and I was just shortening the breath, felt tired all the time, fatigued. No, I can get away from this plant. I said, I think I might feel better.
Mhm.
You know.
So you requested disability, or did
Well,
you?
they had a little buyout,
I see.
volunteer separation thing. So I had to think about it for a while, and I said, well, I just take that and I'll just leave, you know.
Yeah.
Right. Also, I didn't want to be a violent. Never been a violent person or anything, and it's like my manager, my supervisor, like in my face a lot, you know, everything. Like up in my face kind of thing, and I kind of like, well, I would just smile and walk away from them, you know, like, well, whatever, you know. I just didn't want to, do anything that I would be sorry of either, you know. And
It
I
must have been very
so
frustrating.
it was pretty much, yeah.
To be feeling sick. And
Right, sick
not
and
able-
being harassed
and
too.
then have
Right.
the harassment.
Right. It's like it's no fault of my own, you know. It's like, you know, wow.
Do you think that the management knew how sick you were?
And they knew.
They knew.
Right. Matter of fact, my manager told me this one time. He said, yeah, I looked into your records and I know you're a sick person and everything. He said, you're sick. Well, he said, you're sick like, like this one supervisor. He's supposed to be sick too. He was sick. He said, but you got to communicate with us and everything and this, that, and that. I told myself, I try to communicate with you. I said, you guys don't seem to be communicating with me, you know. And that time I tried to talk to them, they'd be walking away, you know. And when I had to go to National Jewish Hospital for those tests, see, well, they would want me to come in, come in and work. Maybe it might be an hour or so that, that after I got out of the testing for the pulmonary function test, riding a bicycle and stuff. I didn't feel like it. So they said, well, you have to come to work after that. I said, you mean by the time I drive to Rocky Flats, I said, it's time for me to, go home. They said, well, we don't care. You're supposed to come to work. So I said, this one time I told myself, I don't care. She can put me down, excused absence, unexcused absence, or emergency leave or whatever. I said, I don't feel like coming to work. I said, I'm not coming. So I didn't go.
It's kind of like you'd had enough at that point. You had
Right.
to take a stand.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Do you think the other people that had chronic beryllium disease were harassed as much as you, or do you have any way of knowing?
I don't really know. I don't know. I might have just been me, or maybe some of them might have been. Some depend, I guess, maybe the supervisor, or department that they worked in, or something like that. I don't know.
It's not something you've talked about with other people.
I've talked about it with some of them. Some of them, like they did. Some of them supervisors were, giving them problems. Matter of fact, I think a letter came out from the union that some supervisors were giving, the workers problems when they had to go for the testing at National Jewish as to how to charge their time and everything, and what code to put it on and all that kind of stuff.
So when you decided to leave, you took a buyout, but now, did that become, you're considered to be disabled now, but
Yeah.
but not just a temporary thing, it's a permanent disability, is that right?
Right, it's permanent, right.
And do you still get some kind of disability payment?
Right, I get a little disability and a little bit of retirement, which I couldn't really get the full amount because my age plus my years of service didn't equal up to I think the 85 points or something like that. So, matter of fact, I think maybe they dropped it now to maybe 70 or something like that, what they should have done years ago. I always thought that working at a place like Rocky Flats, any other place, similar to that, even across the country, other places similar to Rocky Flats, that a person worked there maybe 10, 15 or 20 years or something like that. It should be like having worked at some other place like maybe 30 or 40 years or something,
Yeah.
And they should have gotten the full benefits, like full investing and all of that, and full retirement,
Yeah.
right? But it didn't work that way.
Are you going to get any compensation from this recent legislation to compensate?
Yes, because I got compensated from that.
Uh-huh.
Right.
I guess that wasn't a really large amount.
No, not really. Matter of fact, myself and some more guy were the guys that were behind it. Matter of fact, we filed a lawsuit, okay, and got the ball rolling. Myself and a few other guys.
Oh,
And we had some attorneys that, matter of fact, one of them was from Boulder, and one was like from Tennessee.
the attorneys?
Right.
Uh-huh.
And then finally they had some come from Texas that, just working with us and everything that really. And then we networked with the other people that was in Tennessee, like a guy named Glenn Bell. I don't know if you heard of him or not.
No.
Glenn Bell.
Glenn
Bell. Glenn Bell.
Bell.
Bell, B-E-L-L. Glenn Bell.
Oh, Bell. Yes.
Right.
Uh-huh.
He's we was networking. I guess they found out about our support group here in Denver, and they have a support group there, and other places around the country have a beryllium support group.
Oh, uh-huh.
So we kind of like start networking and writing, letters, to senators and things like that,
Good. Uh-huh.
and talking to the media, to try to get, get help,
Did you, so you participated in a support group here. Did you kind of start it?
Yes, pretty much. Yes, I initiated it, everything. Starting, and I talked to Dr. Newman and everything. I even made mention that we could probably, start it and come to our own home, like that, and get together, maybe once or twice a month or something like that. But then they got it started at National Jewish. Right.
So it ended up that it was at National Jewish.
Right, once a month. We go normally it's the last Tuesday of the month that we go there.
The last Tuesday?
Tuesday, right.
So
okay,
you still go?
Right.
Good.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I go.
Yeah.
Gives me support.
Yeah.
Yes. Right.
Well, good for you.
Right.
And, did you just kind of figure out that would be helpful to be able to talk with other people?
Right. Yes, I did. Right.
So, and Dr. Newman then kind of facilitated it by offering the place.
Right. Exactly.
But it was your idea.
Well, I think so.
Yeah.
'Cause I wanted, people coming up to me like they had matter of fact, especially like the article I was telling you about, and everything that appeared in the paper, and I was kind of like outspoken, so they was like, asking me questions and stuff. I said, maybe you need to, come in some group setting or something like that, so we can all, talk about, our feelings and, the sadness and, whatever.
Yeah. How many people have come to the group? Of course, it's been going on a long time. It probably shifts in the number.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You're right.
When you first started, how many were?
Like about 5 or 6, and it got up to about 18, 20, or something like that, and then some kind of like, come sometime, and then they, don't come, like that. But there's myself and a few others that are, really regular. We go out all the time.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know when the last time I missed. I've been going forever.
It's a really important part of your life.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I just had an idea, and it might be something you'd want to think about, but it would be interesting to get a little bit of that support group, in our oral history.
Yes, right.
So
sure. Okay.
Maybe that's something you could think about and
Right.
talk to the other people.
I sure will. Right.
How they would feel about that.
Right. Okay, at the next support group meeting, I'll bring it up.
Good.
It's okay if I give them your name,
Sure.
your number?
Yes.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Doc.
That would be great. And I don't know, you probably, mostly you would be wanting things to be confidential, I'm sure, in that support group, but, maybe just take 20 minutes or something like that where people would know that
Right, exactly.
it's going to be.
Right, exactly, right. Maybe about 20 minutes or so, because like I said, everything is pretty much confidential there. Yeah, right, sure.
Well, we can be in contact about that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, now, how did the lawsuit come about? Did you find a lawyer yourself, or how did that come about?
Yeah, we went to several lawyers. Yeah,
Oh.
some of them didn't want to touch it, you know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of like, well, gee, no, we can't handle nothing magnitude. But then this one attorney, Ann Rowland from Tennessee, I guess she was working with some a group back there in Tennessee, and she heard about the group here, and then she came here.
Uh-huh. And did she help you get another lawyer here?
Right, exactly. Being from out of state, she had to have one, I guess a counsel or something they call it here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so she found that, and then you worked with those lawyers.
Right.
For the whole suit, whether there were several of you involved, is that?
Right, exactly. Right, it was.
Was it all of the people with chronic beryllium disease, or just a group of you?
Just a group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some probably wanted to remain anonymous. Then, especially some that were still working. You have some that's working that did, file. They wanted to be in it. Matter of fact, I don't know if you remember that they had the hearing and stuff in Jefferson County 2 or 3 years ago. You remember anything about that?
I think I heard about it.
Yeah, right. And we lost. Right.
Do you have that's probably, you have newspaper clippings and.
Right.
I should look that
right.
up. How did they have a full trial, or they didn't settle?
Yes, they had a full trial and everything. But I guess what happened is probably that the jury was confused. That's my understanding, was that they were confused. They thought they were ruling in favor of the workers to a certain percentage, but I guess the percentage wasn't enough. The way I understand it was, it had to be like over 50% or something like that. It had to be like, I think 51% or more, I think something like that. Otherwise, if it was less, then it went the other way. That was my understanding.
Uh-huh. So the trial was 2 or 3 years ago then?
Yes, right.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I didn't read the final, I just heard that it was going on, but I didn't read the final.
Right. Yeah, the Rocky Mountain News headline says, "Flash workers lose." Right.
How did you feel about that?
Well, I guess I didn't feel as bad as some of the guys that were involved in it. Because, as a matter of fact, the one that was right, that that they was going to take like groups of maybe 3, maybe 4, like so. So that first group, they were like, they really, they was upset, pretty much upset about way everything turned out. Mm-hmm. It seemed like like everything was like clear cut, but I don't know what happened. I didn't go. Uh-huh. I didn't attend. Mm-hmm. I just kept kept up with the newspaper and stuff like that. Right.
So you didn't testify, or
no.
They didn't have.
No.
I presume that in something like that they use a lot of sort of scientific data and that kind of thing about. They don't have each of you testify in terms of how you got it or anything like that. Then.
I said I don't know. I didn't. It didn't even get to me. And it's kind of like.
I see.
Right. They, kind of like, well, I guess the attorneys were like they were losing other cases, and so it's kind of like, well, I don't know what happened. Uh-huh. I can't say we got sold out, but
yeah.
I wonder sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you feel that the lawyers were invested in winning?
I think they put up a good fight. It seemed like, from what I understood, but I don't know, maybe the other attorneys were better.
Uh-huh.
kind of like a football team. One team they got to lose and one have to win. So, you know, maybe we're on the losing team.
Yeah. But it wasn't a settlement then. It was just, I mean, often things like that are just kind of settled before the trial is completed. Was that?
Well, I don't know. I really, like I said, I really don't know. It wasn't. It was kind of like, to me, it was like to prove that, the workers did have a beryllium disease. They got it from Rocky Flats, and, where else could you get it, so that kind of thing. So the rest of, like I said, I wasn't there,
Yeah.
so I don't really know all the rest of, particulars.
Did you choose not to go and listen to the, be there when they?
Right, I choose not to go.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Why was that, if I may ask? Was it just...
Well, I just I didn't want to get upset,
Yeah.
and sometimes I get upset pretty easy, so I figured I just stay away. I had thought to myself that I was going to go and be there every day and all that kind of stuff, but that's just, as much more as the time drew near, I kind of like, no, I don't want to go. No.
How's it been for you since you quit working at Rocky Flats? You're feeling better, I gather.
Right, I feel better.
Uh-huh.
Right. I still, like I said, shortness of breath and, feel tired and fatigued. But I have sleep apnea, and I just, try to get my rest and,
Yeah.
try to do a little exercise. Right.
And you go to your support group.
Oh, yes. I go there, and I go to union meetings still, and I go to other, like the breakfasts. I meet, some former workers from Rocket Flats, and we kind of like, reminisce.
Yeah. When you look back on what were some of the best things about working at Rocky Flats, what comes to your mind?
Well, we had good benefits. Pay was good, that's about it, I guess.
And I gather, I usually ask, what were the worst things about working at Rocky Flats? I think I can guess, but I'll ask you anyway.
Well, we got exposed, exposure, and quite a few people got sick from working up there. And I think that there probably be more people that would get sick from working up there. And I've been kind of like, I guess you want to say, an advocate, right? Toward trying to, continue studies on the workers that, like that's working up there now. And, in the future, some of those people are going to be getting sick, like years down the road. And the doctors probably want to know what's their problem, what's wrong with them. They want to know they probably forgot that they worked at the plant.
Yeah.
But if they do get sick, I think that they should be compensated too, just as well. And I think that they should, they should continue to be like National Jewish and Colorado, University of Colorado should be funded to do study on these workers.
Yeah.
And they should go on like as long as it takes,
Yeah. Hold up just a minute. The tape is just about to run out, so I'd like to change it. So
Right,
I'll
okay.
just stop this and then change the
Okay.
tape. This is a continuation of the oral history with James Turner, and he's going to talk about some of the prepared materials that he has put together that that give information about beryllium disease, and so maybe we'll just start here. First of all, Jim, you were telling me about this article, and maybe we could just, this was the article that you were speaking of, that first article, is that right?
Yes, this is an article that I was speaking of,
Yeah.
which came out in the Sunday Denver Post in 1992. And
Yeah.
Dr. Lee Newman is my doctor here, which I have here on the project board that you can probably see a little bit more clearly.
Yes.
And he's a great doctor, and he diagnosed me with chronic beryllium disease in 1990, and as well as a lot of the other workers at Rocky Flats. And there are some workers that went like to, I think back east to Pennsylvania up there, but most of us went, National Jewish Hospital. And like I say, he's a great doctor. And here's a picture of, some of the article news clipping that I've, collected, through the years. And
so you put this all together?
Yes, I put this all together, as well as another one that I have. So I have two, similar to here. This one. And over here is R.K. Roberts. He worked out at the plant, and he was like with the toxic, I think, material committee. And he helped me out quite a bit when I was going through, my ordeal out at the plant, trying to get workers' compensation, which I applied for, and I was denied. Even though the administrative law judge ruled in my favor, and the company appealed it, and they fought me, and I ended up having to pay like half of the money, almost half of what I got, from workers' comp to the attorneys. And they hired this one doctor to fight the case, even though the best doctors I thought was at National Jewish, some of the best doctors, but I guess they said they wanted a second opinion because they didn't want to be a workers' comp pushover. So it's all in this article here. It's the reason why that they was fighting me. And I think I was one of the first ones that really, filed a claim. And so to me, they was like sending a message to the rest of the workers. Well, look what happened to Turner, so they were saying, well, we don't want to go through what Turner went through. So they probably was kind of hesitant to, file a workers' comp claim. Even though, like I mentioned before, at other meetings that I figured that I had to do what we had to do, to get awareness to, this deadly disease that was people had attacked, contracted from Rocky Flats doing work, Berylliosis.
So you felt that you kind of led the way, and by what happened to you, probably discouraged other people from filing claims.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right. But now, the more I understand, the more as the plant began to, reach the closure date, that more people are coming forward now, because within the next 2 or 3 years, something like that, the plant should be probably closed.
Yeah.
They expect it to be closed.
Yeah.
And some of these people, they'll probably, be looking for, ways to get compensated.
Yes.
Right, they'll be jumping on the bandwagon, I would say.
Right, yes,
Right.
yeah. Well, this is wonderful.
Thanks.
Let me get just a little bit more. Can you talk about this person here?
Yeah, this person is Alfonso Cardenas. He's on oxygen. He worked out at the plant for several years, and he was in my support group. He was in the lawsuit that we filed to try to get the ball rolling, and he, matter of fact, he's been pretty sick lately. I talked with him maybe last week or something like that. And he's been feeling pretty bad, but he's still still with us. And here, let me see. Like I said, down here, some workers say they didn't understand the risk, and that's very true. And that's if they did understand the risk, probably a lot of good workers probably wouldn't have been working at that plant. But everything pretty much hush hush, when Dow was out there, Dow Chemical, and we worked and we did our job, like I mentioned earlier, and we did it great, did it well. And I'd like to praise, I think it was Congressman David Skaggs. He was, he introduced a bill several years ago He was the one, this is 1990, I think it was, that he introduced this bill to try to get workers compensated from nuclear weapon plants throughout the country.
Huh.
Yes, so, yeah, I think he
You
did a great job.
You probably talked to Representative Skaggs quite a lot.
Yes, we did. We talked with him and everything. Yeah. Yeah. And then all the rest of them, that, afterward too, like Congressman Udall and all the rest of them, they did great work too. All of them, but they all did, even all across the country. Yeah, that worked with the other workers in other states and other cities.
Yes.
They worked at the other plants similar to Rocky Flats.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Now, it looks like this this article here about leukemia,
Yes.
so that's a, can you speak about that in particular?
Well, it said that leukemia rates are high in kids of nuclear workers. That was an article that I clipped out of the paper. And I think it was written by Barry Morrison. I talked with him before and everything. And what bothers me that I have a daughter that's sick. And for years, they kept saying, the doctor was saying that we don't know what's wrong with her. She think that she have a mixed connective tissue disease or some other kind of disease. But finally, they said that she have lupus. That's what they finally said. But somewhere in my mind, it was, I had a gut feeling that it might have been related to me working at the plant.
Yeah.
And that could have had something to do with it because I used to come home, and she was little. I used to, pick up and play with her and everything. And, I just wonder if I had picked something up in my clothes or in my hair. I used to wear my hair really long, an afro. And I was wondering, like, even though we took showers, okay? I won't say we took showers when we worked in the hot air and supplied air suits, but that was other time that we were walking through the plant and, like just walking through the air, that's something, in your regular street clothes, that something could have been airbound that could have, gotten on you,
Yes.
you could have brought it home.
Yeah.
So that's what I clipped that out.
How old is your daughter now?
Well, she's, I think about 32.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Is she?
She's on dialysis 3 days a week, and she's, been sick for quite a few years.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. You have another one. Should we get out, look at the other one too?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
Just turn this off
Okay.
momentarily. Okay. We have another poster here. Do you want to talk about that, Jim?
Oh, yes, this poster here is about, nuclear black lung that was written in the Sunday, the camera, the Boulder camera, was written by Katie Newman. And she interviewed myself and several other, people that was in my support group. And so here, this one guy is Bill Fletcher. He have a Chronic Beryllium Disease. He's on oxygen full time, 7 days a week. And this is Alfonso Cadena, the other guy that was on the other picture a little bit ago. And he's on oxygen full time. This guy here is Richard Stewart. He's no longer with us. So he passed away about a couple of years ago. This other guy, T. Scott, he's in my support group too. And there's a guy down here named Michael Jackson. He's the one who had the website for the Beryllium support group. And
These are really wonderful. Do
Thanks.
you make many presentations? Or you
No.
go around and?
No, I didn't. For when I used to go, when we had meetings like some of the town meetings and stuff back when they would come from Washington, like the one that trying to work with us, trying to get this passed and everything. And I had a lot of copies of a lot of this stuff. I would copy. I spent quite a bit of money, getting stuff copied, and I had copies for people to take and stuff like that. But
You've not gotten any compensation for all of the things that you've done in terms of.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, because like I said, I made a lot of calls back, the guys back in Tennessee,
Yeah.
in all the different parts of the country.
let me start this again, and let's just talk a little bit about your work as an advocate.
Right.
So I'll just, it's not on now, I'll start it again. Oh, maybe it is on. Yeah, it's on now.
Right.
Anyway, let's talk a little bit about your work as an advocate. It sounds like it started when you formed the support group. You started.
Right. Well, it started after, especially like after I was getting harassed and everything, and I was wondering if I was the only one, that was getting harassed. And one that, had been diagnosed with Chronic Beryllium Disease. And I found out there was some others that were going through some, similar, things that I was going through. And that was something that some of them wasn't, It's kind of like, well, my supervisors are great to me. When I have appointments and stuff and that, they don't say anything. I go and, I fill in my time card and yada, yada, yada. But that was others, like I said, that did have problems. But I just, sometimes I wondered to myself, I thought to myself, I said, maybe I should have just, kept my mouth shut or something like that. And then on the other hand, I got to thinking myself, I was coughing and I was sick. I had to say something. I didn't have too much choice. Even though, like I mentioned before, it cost me my job, getting harassed and stuff, because some guys like that I know that probably would come forth, but they know if they are diagnosed with the disease, they're going to take you off your job. Depending on where you're working, they might bring you and put you in another area, someplace else, doing some other job, something that you're not, that's not your classification. And they probably just figure, well, heck, I'd just rather be left alone. If I'm sick, well, so be it. I still have a job. I'm getting paid every week, so why should I worry about it? And I wouldn't like that. It was like I was just sick, and I had to find out what's wrong with me. So I was glad I did, find out, because if I hadn't, I ended up telling where I'd be today, if I hadn't. And got medicine and everything, gotten taken care of.
Yeah. And if you had, is the course of the disease such that if you don't take care of yourself as best you can, then it worsens?
Yes, right. That's my knowledge, is that you especially being constantly exposed too.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Being in the area, it's kind of like, well, if you're not in the area, not around it, then your body might kind of, heal itself.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Instead of being constantly exposed, it might stay at the same level instead of getting worse.
Right.
Right.
Is it your impression that any of the guys that you know of that didn't acknowledge that they were sick, do you think being exposed more worsened their condition?
I would think so. Yes, I think so.
What do you think in terms of the support group? I mean, it's obviously helped you. Do you think is your impression that it helps other people too?
Yes, I think it does. Because there have been people that come to my support group that they was in, pretty depressed. And, after, we talk and stuff, and they see them, seem like it helped. Talking about it and everything, and talking to others that, that are experiencing a similar situation as you are.
Let's see. Can you think of anything that we haven't covered that you think it would be important for people to know about? Obviously you've been very active in terms of all of the issues around health, not just with beryllium disease, but it looks like in other areas too. But, do you have some thoughts that you would want things people would think about? with respect to working in Rocky Flats or facilities like that?
Well, I would like to think that, people should take advantage of this testing that was going on in the U.S. Farmer workers, the testing of, for like hearing and, other elements other than beryllium that they might have kind of exposed to.
Yeah.
Some people kind of like, well, I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to go through it, I just rather just not even know about it, you know what I'm saying? And,
Yeah, you think they're afraid?
well, I don't know if they're afraid, if they, some people like, they don't want to go through any type of hassles or anything, they just rather just be left alone. They don't want to be bothered. People are people, so what can you say?
But you would urge people to take advantage of what they can.
Exactly. And try to see if they can, keep this program, like I mentioned earlier, keep the programs going. Keep, get funding for them, if they're, National Jewish and University Hospital, if they're running out of funding, more people that, that's involved, like they said, there's strength in numbers. But then maybe, they can, get more funding. But if it's nobody seems to be interested in everything, but sooner or later it's going to just die out. And people, and like I mentioned before, I have a feeling that people further down the road are going to be getting sick. And especially like they're tearing down a lot of these buildings out at the plant, right? And a lot of stuff been in these nooks and crannies for years. It's going to be coming out, so people are going to be getting exposure. So 5, 10, 15 years down the road, people are going to be getting sick. So, like I say, they should keep it going.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anything else that you would want to say right now?
Well, not at this time that I can think of. Should I do, I'll be able to, I'll contact you,
Okay.
Dorothy, and I'll get with you. I make a promise, that we communicate and everything.
Okay, good. Well, let's stop for now, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Dorothy.